good gathering. I first of all thank Senjos and IMR for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to address you all. Though my presentation is basically exports, that is, I don't think the majority of the audience over here is from the industry. I see the defense personals over here, most of them. But then nevertheless, defense personals, what I have noticed in the defense industry after the retirement, always get an opportunity to work in. And with the growing defense industry, with the government giving so much of impetus for the defense sector, I'm sure someday you also will be there in the defense industry and will promote exports like we are thrusting at present. So my presentation is on defense exports and the licensing framework for munitions. How do you move it? Yeah, so these are the principal legislations that control exports. Foreign Trade Development Regulation Act, 1992. The Arms Rules 2016, notified under Arms Act, 1959. The Customs Act, since exports, so Customs Act is also applicable. The Weapons and Mass Destruction Act, WMD Act 2005, and the Chemical Weapons Convention Act. Now, the control list of the Government of India is called SCOMET, which stands for Special Chemical Organisms, Materials, Equipment, and Technologies. Now, India, as a member state of Wassenaar Arrangement, has to follow the regulations given by the agreed by the Wassenaar countries, and the control list of the Wassenaar is always harmonized with the Indian control list, which is called the SCOMET. Now, in this SCOMET list, there are various categories. The 9 categories from 0 to 8, and category 6 is the munitions list, with which Ministry of Defense and Department of Defense Production are concerned. Department of Defense Production issues authorizations for export of items contained in munitions list under the FTDR Act, by virtue of the powers delegated by Directorate General of Foreign Trade, and under the Arms Act by virtue of the powers delegated by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, to allow the exports of munitions list, we have formulated a standard operating procedure, and I will now explain you the procedure that is followed in the department for examining these applications and allowing the exports. The standard operating procedure initially was notified in 2015, just before India became the member of the Wassenaar and this SCOMET list was notified. It has been simplified 6 times since then. As and when the industry says that we are facing this problem, this is now not the way the things are going on in the rest part of the world, so we need to align with them. We always take their suggestions and try to improve upon our regulations. The last revision that we did in our operating procedure was in May 2024. Then besides giving authorizations regularly for each application, we also have made a provision for the Open General Export License. I'll explain later in this presentation as to what this stands for, what this is meant for. And all these notifications are available on our websites. Now, under the arms rules, there's a provision that any export of the arms and ammunition, authorization in Form 10 is required, which is defined in the arms rules. But since all the arms and ammunition covered in the arms rules are also a part of this SCOMET list, so only for 9 parts of arms for which the Ministry of Home Affairs insisted that manufacturing license is mandatory, we issue authorization in Form 10. Now, these parts are of primarily the pressure-bearing parts of small arms, that is barrel, cylinder, bolt, breech block, slide, firing pin, frame, extractor, hammer, striker. The procedure is the same as we follow for the authorization that we grant for under the FTDR Act. Now, this is the control list of the Wassenaar munitions list and this COMET category 6, which is the munitions list of Government of India. They are identical in every aspect. Since it is harmonized every year in December, a plenary is held in Wassenaar, Austria, Vienna, where all the changes that are required to be made in the munitions list are adopted, and accordingly, every nation, every member state of Wassenaar, in its national control list, makes these changes. So there are 22 subcategories in category 6, all with specified items. And these are the broad categories of the items that I've mentioned over here. I mean, these contains parts and components also, which are specially designed or modified for defense use, military use. Now, this also covers the software and technology of the items which are covered in this munitions list. Now, there is commodity identification note in this COMET clarifying as to for which items there may be restriction. There are certain items for which authorization is not allowed at all. It is a prohibited item. So that item may fall in this list, but then authorizations may not be granted for that. And for category 6A017, which has the nuclear-related items, it's not the DDP, but the Department of Atomic Energy, which gives license for export. Now, to simplify the procedure and for the ease of doing business, for also the industry to understand, we have divided the munitions list and the procedure into various parts for processing the applications. So under part A of our SOP, we examine the export of major items, complete systems, platforms. Those are called the Appendix 2 of SOP. Those are covered in Appendix 2 of SOP. Appendix 1 of SOP is the munitions list, and Appendix 2 is the list for which we follow a specified procedure. Under part B, we examine the export of parts and components, which are not covered in Appendix 2 of SOP. Then under part F covers the transfer of technology issues, items. Likewise, now those are as per the items. Now likewise, we have divided again into again with respect to the purpose for which the item is being exported. It could be for the purpose of exhibition, for the purpose of demonstration, testing, evaluation, and for participation in tenders. And then recently, in 2022, we added part G, which allows re-export or export of an item which has been imported by the industry and is being re-exported to the OEM. It could have been imported for various reasons. Maybe the item was exported initially and has been rejected by the OEM that it is not the way we wanted, it needs repair. So when the item is imported, for its export again, he needs an authorization. So such cases are covered under part G. Now these are the documents that are mandatory for us to examine the export application. A brief write-up about the export items of export. Being civilians and being in the defense production department, here in the office, I mean, all the persons working on these applications are basically not technical ones. So for them to understand what the item is, it's better that the industry gives us the write-up about the item for us to make out whether this item actually is covered under SCOMET or not, it requires an authorization or not. Technical specifications of the item. In case we fail to understand as to whether this item should be covered in part A or part B or maybe some other part, for that reasons we need to understand the technical specifications as well. Now these two, the other two documents, that is copy of purchase order and EUC, are also mandatory. Without the end user certificate, that is EUC, in the format that we have prescribed, it's not possible for the department to examine the application. Now for the 9 parts of the small arms, for which we give authorization under the arms rules, industrial license is mandatory. For participation in exhibition, tender, repair, testing, etc., whatever relevant document is there, if you're participating in an exhibition, the confirmation of your participation. If you're going to participate in tender, the tender document released by the importing country's organization is required. If it's going for repair, then a confirmation from the repairing agency or the testing agency is required. And before issue of authorization, the original EUC has to be submitted to the department. Now these are the basic declarations that is required in our end user certificate. 1, the items being restricted for export, it is necessary that controls are there. So the undertaking has to be given by the end user of the item that it will not be used for the purposes other than those declared in the EUC, and that such use shall not be changed nor the items modified or replicated without the consent of Government of India. Since the item belongs to industry in India, the IPR rights of the item are with the Government of India's company which is there in our country. So any change or any modification to that item has to be with the consent of Government of India. And then the second condition is that it will not be subsequently transferred or re-exported without the prior authorization of the original exporting government. That is again Government of India. The item will not be diverted, sold or transferred to any third party whatsoever except as indicated in EOC. In case it is required to be transferred to any third party, that has to be clearly brought out in the end user certificate. If required, a verification, certification, possession of the item would be provided. So government can at any point of time ask the exporter and to tell its customer that we need a verification, certification, and which the Government of India's officials, maybe somebody from here or some official in the Indian mission abroad can do it. That the item shall not be used for any purpose that relates to development of mass destruction, the weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is the consultation and the examination process. For Part A, that is for platforms, complete systems, we allow export only after interministerial consultations. We have 6 stakeholders, including MEA, DRDO, the 3 services, and the International Cooperation Wing of the DOT, which is our MOD stakeholder. For Part B, that is when the parts and components are going, since they will be integrated into a major product by the OEM abroad, so we don't insist upon government-signed EOC. And then consultation also is not mandatory unless the items are going to specified countries, a list of which is maintained by MEA, and if it is going for use by the civilians or non-military use. Then for transfer of technology, since technology is being transferred, again we have the consultation with the interministerial organizations. Then for parts, when the item is going for participation in exhibition, testing, evaluation, or tenders, in that case, consultation is undertaken only when the item is covered in Appendix 2, or that is when it is a platform or a complete system. If it's a non-Appendix 2 item, if it's a part or a component, then consultation is not required. And for export of sample for participation in tender, consultation is not required if the exporter is the manufacturer of the item being sent. Now, the process of giving authorization has been made online since October 2018. We have a dedicated portal called defenseexim.gov.in. Any industry can register on that. Registration is mandatory, and the scanned copies of all the documents that are required for processing the applications are required to be uploaded, and the applications are to be digitally signed. This is a landing page of the Defense Exim portal. This is where a company can register, new company. This is the login page. Now, once the export has been allowed by the department, the documents, record keeping has to be done for at least 5 years by the exporter. He is required to keep a copy of the bill of shipments, documents such as purchase orders, EUCs, etc., details of items, consignee, users, transactions, etc., in case of open general export license. And the quarterly or annual end reports on usage of OGIL are required to be sent to DDP. These are the recent policy initiatives that we have taken to promote the exports. The repeat orders of same product to the same entity. If an item is going to, say, X country, item A is going to an X country by, say, a company C. Next time, if the same C company applies for the same item to the same country, and if we have already undertaken the consultation process, which is actually a little time taking, so next time if he applies for that, we don't go in for consultation. We immediately issue authorization based on the previous comments of the stakeholders. Likewise, repeat out of the same product to different entity, other consultation with the other stakeholders is not required. Only since the country is different, we consult MEA. For intra-company business, for intra-company transfer of technology, since under Part F, interministerial consultations is required, And one of the mandatory documents that is required is the government-signed EOC. So that was done away with for intra-company business, and the buying company was allowed to give the EOC, and based on that, we have started giving authorizations. In case of intercompany transfer of technology, since the companies are different, technology from one company in India to a different company abroad is there. So only for the member states of WA, we have allowed to accept the EUC given by the importing company. But then that is subject to the condition that the technology is neither developed nor owned by any Indian firm or government. The firm abroad may have a subsidiary here, and it may be giving it to some other company abroad. So since the technology does not belong to Government of India or any company in India, we allowed such exports by accepting the EUC signed by the importing company. Parts and components for non-government end use. So initially when the munitions list into 2015 or before that, the munitions list items were allowed to be exported only when it is going for a government end use. Subsequently, as we have started promoting MSMEs also, since on every MSME cannot give it to a government only, OEMs abroad also require the items. So we have started allowing export of parts and components to for non-government end use also, but that is done in consultation with MEA. And export of systems, of major platform systems, etc. Major platforms are, what I mean is complete systems is the guns, the small arms. Since they're complete items, they are covered in Appendix 2. So if they are to be required to be sent for some other non-government end use, in that case, the government of the importing country may not be willing to give government-signed EOC. So in that case, we have allowed, we have started accepting the international import certificate, which the importer or the customer of the Indian company may possess, and export is allowed. But then again, this is only for the WA member countries. Export of non-lethal items as sample for business development. Non-lethal items, we have made a list of say around 8 to 10 non-lethal items. If a company, a manufacturer of those non-lethal items intends to send the items for business development, that is also allowed, but then he should possess a manufacturing license for that item. We have delegated powers to DRDO and the DPSUs for exploring export opportunities. Now, re-export cases after undertaking repair or rework, since the item, when it was initially exported, at that point of time, consultation with stakeholder would have been done. So again, reconsultation with the stakeholders is not done, and it is treated as a subset of a subclassification of repeat order. We have increased the validity of the authorizations that we issue from 2 years till the completion of the orders. Now this is open general export license, which I said we have come with this because many times we notice that a company keeps coming for various purchase orders of small items very often. Let's say every 10-15 days they come with another application. So to facilitate such exports, we have issued an open general export license. This is a one-time license which is valid for a period of 2 years. And once a company gets that open general export license by us, now for the items covered in that open general export license and to the countries that are mentioned in that open general export license, the company can export for a period of 2 years without coming to DDP. He can self-generate the authorizations and show it at the customs and export. The 3 open general export licenses have been notified by MOD. One is for the parts and components. Not every part and component, the parts and components that can be exported are defined, mentioned in the OJL. Transfer of technology, again, not every transfer of technology, technology of every item, but then specified in the OJL, and the major platforms and equipments. These are the 3 open general export licenses. All items of category 6A005, 13, 15. I think the industry is not here. They would understand this. But for the others to understand, you'll have to go through this comment list. Night vision devices, thermal night sights, thermal binoculars, these are also allowed to be exported under OJL. Now for open general export license, since for 2 years we will be leaving it to the company to ensure that all the documents are in place, it is necessary that the company has an internal compliance program in place. This is one of the mandatory documents that is required when a company applies for open general export license. The other conditions are that on-site inspection can be done anytime by the officials of DDP, or post-shipment requirement reporting requirement can be asked for. That's also, this was what the exports of munitions list is all about. And anytime the industry here, the MSMEs participating in this event, they think of, other than giving to the defense forces here, if they intend to export it, I would like you to go through the export policy and the standard operating procedure, which is available on our website, so that you can understand before exporting. Otherwise, the problem is it'll get caught at the customs and then again it'll come to us. With that, I close my presentation. Thank you so much. Industry and is being re-exported to the OEM. It could have been imported for various reasons. Maybe the item was exported initially and has been rejected by the OEM that it is not the way we wanted, it needs repair. So when the item is imported, for its export again, he needs an authorization. So such cases are covered under Part G. Now these are the documents that are mandatory for us to examine the export application. A brief write-up about the export items of export. Being civilians and being in the defense production department, here in the office, I mean all the